Hello and welcome to episode 261, Checkpoint Chat. My name is Alessandro Barbosa. I'm joined by Matthew Figuera. Why do you look so surprised?
Confirmed before the episode started recording that I am in cahoots with Darren, killing penguins, apparently, for leaving my windows open at night.
It's just the most insane thing I've ever
Lenska from the other room going, what?
You see, so even she doesn't know that you're keeping the windows open.
She's the
in
one who
winter.
asked for the windows to be open.
Nah, I struggle to believe that. I'm sorry. I can't believe you were saying the reason we discovered this was because you were saying that you woke up to your blinds rattling because of the wind. And immediately I'm thinking, well, how is there a draft coming in? Did you break a window? Is there like bad insulation? And you're just like, no, I sleep with the window open while it's 0 fucking degrees outside. Who knows?
I sleep with the window open like this much just to get some fresh air in.
It doesn't matter. So then my question was, do you keep your central heating on when your window's open?
And I said,
and you
no,
said
I don't.
yes, because I hate the penguins.
Whatever. I said, no, I don't. You see, you're feeding
listen,
lies out.
I've got the footage.
No, you did. Really?
You don't know what I was recording or when I was recording it.
The only footage you're recording is your own voice. So it'll be a track of you going, what? I can't believe this. You're killing the penguins. Nothing from us. I, on the other hand, have the video footage and my audio, so I hold all the power.
So you can just scrub it of your penguin crimes.
100%. Darren and I are out here doing our
cahoots
best
with one another to rid the Antarctic. You taking the northern hemisphere department. He's on the southern hemisphere beat.
I had a great thing happen the other day. Let me just think, how did this happen? We were talking about, let me ask Lenska, what airline flies to South Africa now? It's like Norse.
Most of them?
No. Norse Airlines now flies to South Africa. And we were like
the Vikings.
You were like, that is it Norse Airlines? Or they're called Norse Airlines, not Viking Airlines.
Oh, that'd be sick.
Lenska looks very confused. She doesn't know. Norse
Airlines.
Boy Airlines. Okay, so Norse Airlines flies to South Africa, which just seems very strange to me because Norway is very far from South Africa.
Yeah, okay. Extremely. Yeah.
Like, no, this is my embarrassing story, not Lenska's like, don't tell them this. I'm the one who had this dumb moments, okay? But Lenska shared my dumb moments, so she's in cahoots with me. So I was like, I suppose... Yeah, it's quite far, but what if you fly north over the North Pole, like just over the globe? I was like, yeah, it's not that far. If you just fly over like the North Pole, let me tell you.
Are you thinking South Africa's on the other end of the North Pole?
No, hang on. So after like a good minute, I was like, no, that wouldn't work. We don't live in a game world where if you fly to the north of the map, you pop up at the bottom. And Lenska's like, oh yeah, you're right.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Hey, it was a hot minute.
You're thinking planes do like the same as Pac-Man on the maze, where he just walks out the right and appears on the left.
Okay, so hear me out. It is a weird logic because... So if it doesn't work if you fly north over the globe, okay? However, it does work east to west. Like you can fly from America to Japan, just by going west. You'll pop up on that side of the globe. But it doesn't work north and south.
I'm sorry, I can't take this seriously.
Alessandra's judging us so hard right now.
The reason it works, do you understand east and west? It's because the earth spins in that direction, Matthew.
Yes. No, I understand that. But that's what I'm saying is that logic obviously applies east to west, but it doesn't apply north to south. You can't fly north over the globe. I just had game logic on. This was like, am I wrong? If you're playing a game and you get to the south of the map, you'll just keep flying north because then the plane will pop you south.
I can't. This is... Wow, you and Darren have spent too much time with one another. What is happening?
I mean, come on. It is one moment. Lenska's leaving this conversation. She says you're never going to podcast.
I love that you both
again.
came to this realization. Like, you both thought this was going to happen. And then, like, simultaneously, you're like, wait, hold on. This doesn't work like that. I mean, technically, it would be rad if it did. Like, there's just a little portal on the northern pole, and then it pops you out to the southern
It would
pole.
be great.
For South Africa specifically, yes, it would be fantastic.
Cool. Which takes me back to the beginning of the story. Why is Norse Airlines flying to South Africa? It's a very far flight.
That's a good question. Are they doing like a direct flight? Surely not.
I don't know. But Lenska just saw it pop up like you can now fly to South Africa with Norse Airways. I'm like, what?
Wild.
That's so far.
Although I mean, it's been a wild week in aviation. So SAA posted their first profit in like who knows how long.
How?
Anything can happen at this point, you know. Boeing might not fall out of the sky. You know, crazier things.
One can only dream.
Yeah, one can only dream. Jesus. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still reeling from that realization. That is really funny.
It was
I was actually rewatching Arcane. I did this weird thing where I watched the first 6 episodes of season 2, and then I was like, wait a minute, I really don't want this series to end. So I started watching.
You watched the first season. Okay, you did it the wrong way. You don't laugh at me and my plain logic when you're doing things like that. It's okay. I rewatched season 1 before getting into season 2 because I'm not a madman.
I should have done that. I realized too late that I was like, wait, I actually want to continue this train. So I finished season 1 again.
And it's real good.
And
second time around, just as good.
Oh, it does make me appreciate, like, I love season 1. I still think it's phenomenal, but season 2 now just seems so much tighter and, I don't know, more considered in certain ways. That season 1 feels a bit worse off coming, like, back to it. But that doesn't take away from it being like still probably like some of the best animation you'll ever see. So still really, it's way slower as well. Like season 2 just does not waste time at all. Sometimes to its own detriment, but I think it's still like, I haven't watched the last 3 episodes. But
I was going to say that I think season 2, it's like they could have not made it one season. I think they could have given a lot more breathing room to some of those key story bits. Like, I mean, no spoilers for the last 3 episodes, but when I finished the episode 6, you and I are both like, they got a lot to wrap up in those last 3 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, like I told you, Shani thought there was a whole new season coming, and it's like, nope, this is kind of it.
Sweet child. We wish.
They must have just done like a cost analysis on this thing and been like, we cannot make a 3rd season considering the 2nd season costs like what, $250 million to make. So I guess that like meant that to rush the end. I don't know. Maybe this was always the story. It seems a bit more rushed. But it's such a minor thing for such a great series. I'm having a great time. Does Lenska watch Arcane as well? No, it doesn't dig it. I reckon she'd like it.
I thought so too, until the episode where Vander dies in episode 3. I found it very traumatic.
Fair enough. It is a highly traumatic part of the series.
It's like, this show's too sad for me. I was like, but it gets so much better after this.
I'd love to know what you would think of episode 6 in season 2 then, speaking of trauma.
Yo, too much trauma in the show.
Jesus, yeah.
So much,
so good.
That's good.
It is really fun listening to, I think her name's Ella Purnell as Jinx. Now, after like seeing her in Fallout, she sounds so different, and I also can't picture her like face behind Jinx's because Jinx is like so deranged. But yeah, it's a good time. The whole voice cast is really, really good. Great series. Very excited to see the last 3. Yeah.
If you haven't watched it, would recommend. You don't have to know a damn thing about League of Legends. You can still appreciate.
I don't know if this is still true, but someone at work said that even though this is the last season, they've said that they want to explore more League of Legends stuff just with like different stories. So like whole new characters, whole new time period.
They're not gonna. But like, what are they gonna make next? Not a thing set in this universe. Like
I also think so much of this, the success of the story hinges on Vi and Jinx. Like. I think building up that relationship where it's not like a sibling, pairing, and the baggage that comes with that will be difficult. Because there's a lot of characters, obviously, that don't appear in this show because they just wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I'd be keen just more for more of this style of animation. I just don't know if they can do another story on this level, in my opinion. But,
yeah. Look, it's. I think the downside of having something so good is always the thing of like, why do you make it better? We live in a world where you can't make it the same. It can't even be on par. It has to be better than what came before it. And I think Arcane has just set the bar very, very high. So whether they've got spin-off shows planned or not, they inevitably going to be compared and be said as like, it's not as good as the original, or the story's not as captivating, or whatever. I think the animation always look good. Like, I have no doubts. The people behind
I feel like that happened to me with Castlevania. Like, I love the original Castlevania series, and then what's the new one called? Nocturne.
Is it not Nocturne? I don't know. It's the spin-off, or
like that.
Not spin-off, like
the new story. Yeah. And like, I still enjoy that. I think the animation's still really good. I just didn't click with its story or characters nearly as well as I did the first ones, and I think it's because of the comparison. I'm very excited for the second season because that's out soonish, and
oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, it's like early next year. And nice. Good old Alucard is back. Yeah. So I'm all in.
Spoilers. Yeah, but I feel you. It's the same as like, I think part of what made Castlevania so good is Trevor Belmont is just such a cool character.
So good.
Like, voiced while very like super like sarcastic's not the right word.
He was
but
like,
you know what I mean?
Cocky,
like,
essentially.
Yeah, cocky's the right word. And then it's like just a somewhat shift in character tone. Like, obviously the sequel's still like super dark and gory and whatever. But you're like, oh man, but this isn't Trevor. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. The whole like rapport between Trevor and Cypher was really fun.
It was really good, yeah. I'm still gonna watch it though, regardless.
Castlevania Nocturne Season 2 is January 2025, so yeah, that's like a month and a bit away.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Really, I just hope it doesn't. Well, I mean, the first season wasn't as short as the first few Castlevania seasons, so it'll probably be like another 8 episodes, which is great. But yeah, it ended off I remember the first season ending off in a really good place, so I'm kind of excited. And also, like, it's just weird because the show follows Richter Belmont, who is, the kind of protagonist of the early Castlevania games and Symphony of the Night. But, a lot of characters that make up that story aren't there anymore. Well, not in the series. So it's interesting having this, like, titular character of the series just without a lot of the supporting cast that made him that character. So
yeah,
it's interesting. Alucard's there again, so
yeah, we'll see. There'll be some nice twists, I'm sure. More Easter eggs.
Yeah, so that was video game series, I guess. What about
please
playing actual video games?
Subscribe to our second podcast.
Yeah,
good God, imagine.
You've got to find a name for it,
Can you, last thing I'll say before we actually talk about games, but can you believe that, like, we live in a time now where there's a plethora of actual game-inspired shows and movies,
and they're good.
It's like in
they're
abundance.
Not, like, bad.
I mean, I remember being in high school with the first Spider-Man movie, and it's like, wow, a superhero movie, like, based on the comic books, and it's like a full budget, like, wow. You look back now, it's like, damn. You had no idea that there's just going to be so much stuff.
Yeah, pretty much all of, like, Hollywood is propped up on the big comic book action films. And they're good. Like, they're completely mainstream. People are into them even without having played the properties. It's rad. It's really, really cool. Like, there's people that I speak to at work who never play video games but are, like, completely enamored with Arcane. Like, absolutely love it. And for different reasons, like, good story, looks good. So yeah, it's cool. I like it a lot, and I think it's only getting better. If you even look back 10 years ago, we didn't have a lot of this stuff. So
no.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
It's cool. Video games, we talk about them here on Checkpoint Chat. The game that I think has been occupying most of my time and most of your time is the same one. Metaphor, ReFantazio, that.
Is it metaphor or metaphor?
Metaphor. can I tell you, there's lots of metaphors in this game. They're not that subtle either.
No, so many.
This game is phenomenal. I guess just a small recap if you're unsure. This is the latest game from the team that basically made Persona 4 and 5. They kind of split off from Atlas and opened up their own studio, and then Atlas just kind of like, I think they repurchased them or something like that. But it's essentially that team going off and wanting to try something different, something else from the Persona series. And they made a game that is mechanically very similar, but I think tone and definitely setting completely different from the modern day slice of life anime style of Persona to a more like, would you say Game of Thronesy, medieval?
Yeah, I think medieval Game of Thrones is probably the best comparison because it is. Oh, there's a king and there's a whole system in place, and I think it's probably.
But there's magic and there's weird elements to the world that aren't essentially grounded in reality. And then there's also this like undertone of, is this world real or is it a fantastical place that is kind of being played out somewhere else? There's a lot going on in this game narratively, but I think the thing that I'm most enamored by, aside from its mechanical improvements over Persona, is just its cast of characters. I think like Persona has lived and died on the cast of its main characters, and I think with every one, each one has its own strengths and weaknesses, 4 and 5. But I just love the variety in metaphor. There's every time a new party member has been added, it's been such a big moment, and the way that they blend into this like crew of growing friends is just I find it very wholesome. It's just a really, really good mix of characters with all different motivations and different problems to solve, and I'm loving seeing their progression.
I think the character motivations and just the characterization of everyone is really strong. I think if I were, well, this isn't me, but I'm sure I could look up on YouTube and there would be just video essays on individual characters and just how deep this game goes with so many things. Like you spoke about, like you touched on some of the themes, like, is this a fantastical world, whatever. My favorite part of this is that there's like snippets of what is like society as you and I know today, and they're like, wow, what a fantasy to live in a world where like, X, Y,
democracy
Z
exists.
And it's like, that's such a weird perspective shift I just never expected ever. Like a fantasy world looking at our world going, whoa, that's the fantasy, right? I was like, wow, it's like looking in a mirror. What's going on here?
And I think it's quite interesting that it's like idealized as this perfect society when I guess we know that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not the case.
I'm kind of curious to see how those two like principles like eventually meld, because there's definitely some overlap somewhere. Like the game makes it very clear at the beginning that your character exists somewhat between these two like realities. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how it plays out near the end, because it is odd in a very interesting way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the characters are really good. I'm not as far as you, so I've still only got. Okay, well, there's a lot of characters, but my main party only has the 4 characters currently, so I'm not switching between party members yet. But I think in lieu of switching party members, you have this whole archetype system, which feels like you're switching characters in and out of your party, and I think that fundamentally is the biggest and most impactful change that Metaphor has over Persona, because you get a lot more flexibility in terms of your party composition and just being able to level different archetypes and open up subtrees within each of their, what do they call them, lineages? They essentially
it's like a lineage.
Jobs, hey, because it's like a job system.
Yeah, it's like you play as one job, you level it up, and you unlock like the more advanced version of that job. Yeah,
I think it's really, really cool. And I like how the game pushes you very subtly to experimenting with different archetypes. The character, what's his name, Moore? The
Moore,
dude who's the small quests he gives you, like, oh, you've unlocked this archetype, level up to 15, and you're encouraged to do that because that's how you advance your relationship with him. So, very recently it forced me to use the merchant, I think it's called the merchant archetype, which didn't seem like a very useful archetype just from the description alone, but the more I leveled it up, it became very powerful, and I would have never have done that if I wasn't pushed in that direction. And it gives you the incentive to kind of experiment with new archetypes fairly regularly. So yeah, I'm having a great time with that system. How has it improved the more you've gone into the game? Because you're quite a bit further than me.
How many hours have you played the game, like plus minus?
Oh, I think the last time I saved, it was around like 24, 25 hours.
Okay, yeah, so I am like 45, 46, so like 20 or so hours ahead of you. And yeah, I think I was saying to you, like pre-recording, that now that I'm like real deep into this game now, I'm at a point where I'm still unlocking different archetypes, believe it or not, but I'm like capping out with some of them with characters that I have. And what's quite cool is that when you max an archetype, you reach the max level on it, you unlock a permanent something. So if you max out the brawler archetype, for example, you'll get a permanent HP buff of like 30 or 40. And it's just cool because then you start bouncing around between them just to even, reach the max level and unlock these permanent buffs. But also just what's quite cool is that you haven't got all the party members, right? But when you do start getting more party members that you can actually field at any time, it becomes even better in terms of, you can have a wide variety of archetypes and you can sub them in and out on the fly. Like you can actually swap your party in battle. It just takes up one turn. So it gives you the opportunity to have like a wide range of archetypes, to try sort out whatever situation you're facing at any time. I love the battle system. I think, like looking at it now and just talking about it and just the amount of time I put into it, I think it is, I want to say like the definitive, but it feels like the definitive turn-based game in terms of like it ticks all the boxes and it does everything so well. I mean, like you said, it encourages you to swap between job types, which is very cool. You don't feel that, I've chosen this job type, like, shit, I'm going to have to replay the game to try something else. Like, it's very flexible and letting you experiment. And even just the turn-based combat itself is so good, where you were saying, you can go into a battle, you can get the jump on an enemy, and it's almost like a puzzle figuring out how to kill them before they get their turn. What are their weaknesses, whatever. But if they get the jump on you, it's the same thing. They can kill you in like one go. So you got to be real careful. It just, as turn-based JRPGs go, this really is its peak. Like they've just optimized and refined so much, and it feels really good to play. Like I'm absolutely loving this game, and I will be sad to finish it. It's like I don't know how far I am from the end still. I think from what I've read, it's 70 to 80 hours, if not more. But I am doing everything. It's this weird thing where even in terms of structure, it follows the Persona thing of you following in-game days, right? Where, you can't just do everything. It's like, no, there's a main objective and you need to tick it off in the next 5 days, whatever it is. So what do you do with the 5 days leading up to that? You can go do side quests, level up any of your traits like courage or eloquence, whatever. How do you split your time on that? And I'm just loving that loop of, whatever it is. What I was getting is that it's so interesting because like even though I'm doing side quests, it just the way the days are structured doesn't feel like it is. It feels like it feeds organically into the story. So it's just really cool from that point of view as well.
Yeah, and like you said, it being peak JRPG in that sense, the refinement I think doesn't stop at the combat level. I think, based off my experience with Persona, there's little things here that are such welcome, like quality of life changes, especially when it comes to the structure of the days. Like, I love getting the little notification of which followers are on the like precipice of leveling up my relationship with them. So it tells me which ones I should, it suggests which ones I should spend time with on a given day. Firstly, being given that suggestion, and secondly, being able to teleport directly to them is a huge boon, because that was not the case in Persona, and you sometimes had to find them.
Oh no!
And they would just move. They would not always be in the same place. It was nonsense. It was like, but then also in Persona, you weren't told like who is really about to level up. So often you would not waste, but you'd have to spend days like kind of spending time with their character, have a very short conversation, and it's like, I feel my bond is growing closer, but it's not quite there yet. And it just, it didn't feel as satisfying. Here, I feel like every interaction with a follower, when you spend the day with them, is like,
a boost,
you are leveling them up very tangibly. You are moving their story forward in a very meaningful way. So I think they've really tightened up every single aspect of the formula that they had previously in that regard. And it just feels like you're wasting less time, especially because the periods where you're given the chance to like tackle a dungeon or level up, they're much smaller windows of time. Whereas in Persona, it used to be months sometimes at a time where you would like, oh, you have to defeat this person at the end of the month and it's now the first. So it was almost like analysis paralysis in like deciding how to spend your time, because often the dungeons were way too high level for you to tackle at the beginning of the month, but then you didn't want to leave it to the end and really screw yourself. Here it's like, I think the most I've seen is 12 or so days where you're given to play around with, and I just think it's far more manageable from a mental standpoint. So I appreciate those subtle changes that I guess they've learned over the years of making this formula over and over again.
But even those 12 days are enough to do like so
much. Yeah,
I haven't had to. I've never had a moment where I've gone like, oh damn, I've got one day left. I have to choose between this follower or that follower. I've 100%. I mean, I don't know if this will change in my last half of the game, but I've been absolutely fine ticking off everything. The game's been more than enough time to like literally. It'll be like, oh no, the main objective happens in 8 days, and then you'll look at your companion list. It's like, oh, you've got 4 people. You can improve your bonds. It's like, okay, I can do all of them. I've got 8 days. I'll spend 4 days doing this. I've still got the evening to do something else with other followers if they want anything. And then I can go do 2 side dungeons, whatever, in the remaining 4 days. So it's, even from that point of view, because I had the same thoughts going into this game. I was like, oh my God, like analysis paralysis. I'm going to have to like sit and choose between followers, and I'm going to have to like choose which side quests I want to do and not do. And like, I don't really want to, I've had ample time to do everything. Like I've ticked off everything as I've played the game. And as I mentioned earlier, it's cool that it feels like it feeds into the story. Like I mean, there are some quests where it's like eye rolling, like, oh yeah, I'm just ticking a box, but it's not like, oh no, like my cat is stuck in a tree. Can you save it in the next 3 days? It's like, it's actual good quests that feed into like, the backstory, or it just ties into the context of the setting, whatever. So yeah, really like polished, great game overall.
Yeah, it's interesting that they somewhat give you less rope to hang yourself with, essentially, but also don't make that time feel less meaningful. So yeah, I think it's a really smart balance of giving you a bit more room to kind of make mistakes as well, and not like force yourself into a corner where you've really wasted a lot of time and now you can't get that back. But also not making your decisions for each day feel kind of meaningless, in that you can do anything, so it's mainly just the order you want to do things in. That's not the case. Like there's dungeons that I haven't done yet, and they're not going to expire, but now because I haven't done them in a certain time, to fit them into the new things that are being introduced will be slightly tricky. So I'm not feeling like I'm missing out on things, but I'm still getting some satisfaction from balancing my days, which I think is a very difficult thing to get right. Because, a lot of people playing older Persona games have really felt the pressure of the time limits, and they have backed you into corners where you've really screwed yourself, going forward. So yeah, I really appreciate this. And I think this is why a lot of people are vibing with it a lot more. It's a perfection of a formula, in the same way that Elden Ring was a perfection of that formula of games, and it took that amount of refinement to get a lot more people into it. They were far more welcoming to new people. So no, I'm glad you're having a good time, and I'm glad like a lot of people who have never tried Persona games are having a great time with this, because I hope that just means that when Persona 6 rolls around, even though it's a different team, that it becomes an even bigger success than 5 was, which was kind of like a breakout moment for that style of games. So yeah, really curious to see how they take this thing.
I would hope. I mean, it's funny because I'd love to play Persona 5, but I can't imagine not having all these optimizations that you've mentioned. So it's kind of a difficult thing to motivate myself to go back and play a really good game, but with bullshit where I can't know which companion is ready to level up or whatever. I can't just teleport to them. So it's like, oh, come on. But
no, it would feel strange. It would feel really strange going back. I think you'd still get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but there's going to be parts where you're like, oh god, this could be so much better, and you're right, you know.
Yeah. Well, I hope Persona 6 does consider some of these optimizations. So yeah, let's see.
No, I really hope so, and I hope Persona 6 is not that far away, because it's been like 9 years since Persona 5? 9, 8 years?
I'm wrong.
So...
Was it that Gamescom we were at where there was like, it was just before Persona 5 launched.
I think it was E3.
Was it E3?
We had the little tags.
And back then I was like, I don't know what the whole Persona is. Like, I mean, I know what Persona is, but like, I don't understand why there's such hype for it, whatever. I mean, that was a lifetime ago.
Yeah, so it came out in Japan in September 2016, which was the year we both went to E3 together. Right. And it released then worldwide April 2017. That was still when they were not doing simultaneous launches for them, because they were still finishing up like English voice acting. That's no longer the case. But yeah, so it'll be 9 years next year since Persona 5, and they've always taken very long between these games. I mean, Persona 4 was a PlayStation 2 game, and Persona 5, came out on PS3 and PS4, wild. But the PS4 was out.
When you put it like that, like, okay, Persona 4 was a PS2 game. They just missed the PS3 and then put Persona 5 on the PS4.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, although was Persona was Persona 5 not one of those games where it was also a cross-platform? Like,
yes, it was. It did come out on PS3, but like in 2016, the PS3 was like dead. You know what I mean? We were months away from the PS4 Pro launching, and this thing came out on the PS3.
Metaphor was available on the PS4.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're just doing the same thing, really.
Yeah.
Because it takes so long between entries, so...
It's just cross-platform, cross-generation, yeah.
To be fair, the gap between 5 and 6 doesn't feel as bad, because they've milked Persona 5 to the
so
nth
many
degree.
spin-offs,
it's like Persona 5 Royal, you had Strikers, you had Tactics. There are so many Persona 5 spin-offs. There was an anime. There's a lot going on. That game was just such a big success for Atlas. So and I think people are ready to move on from it now. And I'm keen. Can't wait for the green Persona. It's going to be great.
100% it's going to be green.
Yeah, it has to be green. We've had yellow, we've had blue, we've had red. Green is next.
They're going to surprise everyone and make it pink or orange. Just
all
like
the primary colors.
Yeah, just not a primary color. Persona turquoise. Like, what? What's going on here?
They're running into like the Pokemon territory here. They should release 2 versions with different colors.
Oh no, don't even say that. My goodness.
They could do that. Be like, one companion is exclusive to this version. Oh, please don't do that. Please.
No.
Like, I actually hate that I put that idea into the universe now.
Just
please
take it back.
That.
Persona devs, if you're listening, stop. Just pull the car over and quit the podcast.
Metaphor ReFantazio, really, really good game. Would highly recommend it. Probably going to be very high, if not at the top of my Game of the Year list.
Such high praise.
Yeah. It did get nominated for Game of the Year.
Yeah, it's in a lot of categories.
That's good.
I think it's
I personally think it should, based off of the nominees. Let me just see if I can find.
It's like Elden Ring,
quickly.
Metaphor, Balatro.
Oh, okay, here's the list. So it's Astrobot for Game of the Year, Metaphor ReFantazio, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Balatro, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Black Myth, Wukong. Very odd. That sort of Game of the Year list made me realize that the games I've primarily enjoyed this year aren't necessarily Game of the Year contenders. Like, Balatro's there and Metaphor there, but like I had a great time with Star Wars Outlaws, for example, which is definitely not going to win any awards. I had a great time with Astrobot, which I don't think will win Game of the Year, but at least it's recognized there. So yeah, a bit of a
I would love Astrobot to win
year.
Game of the Year.
Oh, it would be great. Like, for me, honestly, if Metaphor won, if Astrobot won, or if Balatro won, I'd be stoked.
Balatro won, that'd be insane.
Balatro one would be a fucking wild occurrence, and I think a lot of people would be unhappy about it, but that's a game that came out of nowhere and blew me away. Yeah. Listen, I know Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a big game. I don't think it wins in this group of games.
I would not be upset if it won, but I agree.
I wouldn't be upset. I just don't see it happening.
I agree that it's got its flaws, but I'm like, I love it regardless.
No, the one that bugs me here is Black Myth. Like, it won the Golden Joystick Game of the Year. I just don't see it as a Game of the Year game. Like, there was, it was critically fine. It wasn't like change the world sort of thing. I just don't understand where this Game of the Year push came from. To me, it's a bit weird.
I asked them to play, but I think it was very mainstream. It surprised a lot of people. Because I think...
Yeah, in terms of sales, definitely.
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, it's on this list, probably the one with the lowest Metacritic score. It's got like 81. Whereas you look at Final Fantasy sitting on 90 plus. You look at Metaphor, it's on 94. Balatro is above 90. Shadow of the Erdtree is well above 90. Black Myth is like a really odd outlier. It's 3 or 4 points off Star Wars Outlaws. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Not that these lists are determined by Metacritic alone, but like there's a lot of games that scored way higher than Black Myth Wukong, and so it just feels weird to me.
Yeah.
Oh well. Moving on. Lots of other games. Well, that primarily you have played. Do you want to let me know how the latest Horizon game is? But it's not remastered.
No,
it's a Lego game.
Give me 1 second to timestamp this. No, I had a timestamp.
Production's hard.
Then we went on to a tangent about the Game Awards.
I'm sorry, my bad.
How dare you?
What is the full name of this game? It's Horizon Lego Adventures.
It's Lego Horizon Adventures. So,
jeez, got it nearly.
Just put up some gameplay. So, yeah, Lego Horizon Adventures, I think, is a very left field game, because Lego games are typically, they'll focus on these big franchises, and not to say that Horizon's not a big franchise, but when you've got Star Wars Lego games and Indiana Jones Lego games and all these other things based on trilogies, all these big movie properties, you've got Harry Potter Lego games, if you want to say it's based on books / movies, whatever. So I think Horizon is this weird left field one to me, which I think took a lot of people by surprise. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Like, what happened? Where did this Horizon game come from? Like, what happened? Did Sony just go like, "Hey Lego," or did Lego go, "Hey, we want to make a Horizon game"? Doesn't matter. So it's Horizon, but Horizon, when you think about it, it's this big open world game, very like serious in tone, big adult themes, and it's been condensed down to the typical Lego game, for better or for worse. Have you played a Lego game before at some point in your life?
Yeah, I've played some of the Star Wars ones. They're really they're simple but fun. Yeah.
So I think that's basically what this Lego Horizon game is that it's very accessible. So I'd say like primarily marketed at children. It's very easy to pick up and play. But it does carry over some of the elements from Horizon. So I think if you think combat in Horizon, you immediately think, oh, okay, you've got to scan enemies, you've got to aim for the weak points, if you want to be an effective hunter as Aloy. So that carries over here, for example, where if you're watching the footage, you can see, you've got to scan the enemies, and then it highlights their glowy bits. which is where you got to aim for. But I mean, this isn't as precise as Horizon, where you've got to sit and aim in a 3D environment. Here, it's like, oh, there's a glowy bit on the front, back, or one of the sides. So if you want to take down this enemy quickly, you got to aim at one of those parts there. My only thing is that, as fun as it is, so the game starts out really fun. I just find that there's very little variety for the duration of it's like 6 to 8 hour campaign length, where every level is structured in that you run a bit, you do like you fight a couple enemies, you run a bit, you fight a couple enemies, you run a bit, you fight like a boss. Every single level follows that formula from beginning to end across different biomes, and it's very strange because I think with the Horizon property, there's a lot more you could have explored. Particularly, like, I'm surprised that there's like some very light puzzle elements, but it's, even using the word puzzle, it's like barely puzzles in some instances. You might have a thing of you're in a cauldron, and you need to, find an electric block to throw at an electric thing in the floor to open a door. Like, it's that level of puzzle. But I guess that sort of thing has been toned down because, like I said, this game is meant to be accessible to everyone. So for better or worse, it's super simple while retaining some of the Horizon elements. But yeah, you never got a chance to play it at all.
No. I plan to, because it seemed like the sort of game that would be quite fun to play co-op with Shani, because she's not big into games, but we've played what's that game? Minecraft Dungeons, the sort of ARPG Minecraft thing. We played that a bit, and she kind of liked that. So I thought this would be of a similar vein, where it's like got mechanics, but they're pretty streamlined and toned down in terms of complexity, and there's a low barrier to entry in terms of like movement and precision and stuff like that. So
it's very easy to pick up and play. And I haven't played a Lego game for a long time, but I remember the way Lego games are typically structured. I mean, like, let's take the Star Wars ones, for example. It is, you'll play a character that has a lightsaber, you'll play a character that has a blaster. There's always some other trick to certain characters. But and correct me if I'm wrong, you were incentivized to replay older levels because you might have unlocked a character with, like, I'm making this up, but like with a grapple, for example. But you could then go back to older levels to reach some parts that you couldn't reach before.
Correct. Because each character fits into like a certain archetype that could utilize certain things in levels, so you had to keep coming back to them.
This has none of that. There are four playable characters, so like Aloy, Aaron, Val, and I cannot remember the last name. Teresa? It's like one of the other characters from Horizon, and the only difference is the way they play in terms of the weapons they use. So Aloy obviously has a bow, Aaron has his hammer, for example, but there's no like gameplay mechanic or thing for each of them. Like, one doesn't have a double jump, one doesn't have a dash. They all move exactly the same, and all that changes is their weapons. And the only incentive, not the only incentive, but you incentivize to play across all of them purely if you want to level up and unlock different things. So there's like a very light RPG system in the sense of, as you play, you unlock experience for your character, and as you level up, it'll give you some other buff. So like if you hit level 3, your bow will do more damage. If you hit level 4, you'll get an extra pip of health, whatever. So I mean, the only terms of replayability on that front is if you want to come back and just replay the levels to level up your characters to get them to the max level of 20. So it's just weird. Like, I feel that there's wasted opportunity with this franchise because there's a lot more they could have done. Like, don't get me wrong, it plays well, it looks great. Like, I think hands down, this is the best looking Lego game.
It looks phenomenal based off of this footage.
Yeah, everything's super shiny. Not shiny, like, looks very like vivid and lifelike in this Lego setting. But it just feels like they've toned the game down to be too simplistic. Whereas I feel Lego games typically are very easy to pick up and play, but there's still some level of depth to them, and that, like I mentioned earlier, like playing different characters or having different things to incentivize you to go play past levels. This feels like it lacks that. And in terms of the level structure, like I said earlier, the variety is just, it's lacking so much. All that changes is the biomes, honestly. Like, the biggest difference is going from a typical level to a cauldron. And a cauldron follows pretty much like it does in the actual Rising games where it's indoors, lots of cool like machinery stuff happening. But yeah.
It's a bit of a bummer because, yeah, like you said, the past Star Wars games, especially some of the more recent ones in Lego, have expanded on the variety quite a lot. Like the last Star Wars like collection in Lego had cover-based shooting and a very varied like melee system, and it felt like it was still primarily aimed at a younger audience, but there was some depth to get out of it if you were a bit more seasoned. So this seems like a bit of a step back, and it kind of makes sense because this isn't made by the same developers who've done past Lego games. This is made by Guerrilla, who have never made the style game before.
Oh, is this a Guerrilla developed game? I did not know that.
It's not Traveler's Tales or TT Games, I don't know, which make the other ones for Warner Brothers. Okay. This is a fully Guerrilla and Sony thing. So, yeah, I mean, some of that experience in making these sorts of games and making them replayable, I guess, is kind of lost in that transition, which explains a bit. But the benefit of that is that you get a game that looks light years ahead of the other Star Wars games, I think.
No, it looks phenomenal. And again, like there have been elements pulled from, like, in terms of the enemies you fight and just that combat, like, it's very cool. You'll fight Lego versions of pretty much all the enemies you expect from the original game, from Thunder Jaws to God, now I'm blanking on some of the names, but you know what I'm talking about. Some of the bigger creatures. Like the shell walkers, like that's here, for example. It's the same thing of they've got a big shield in front of them. You've got to figure out how to do damage behind them. So there are elements like that pull over. It's just a pity that in terms of the variety, it's just lacking a bit. And in terms of like duration, it's 6 to 8 hours. Like, and again, we're not going to equate value to time played, but it feels like there's just wasted opportunity. Like you could have incentivized people to replay if characters had, unique movements abilities or things that just differentiated them outside of their core weapon.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing to hear because, yeah, the lineage of Lego games has become stronger and stronger with each release, and this, I think, mechanically feels like it's odd. Like, it looks really, really good mechanically from a gameplay perspective, but if that's the same thing you're doing from hour 1 to hour 6, then yeah, it loses all of its flair, I think. So I think I'll still give it a chance for Shani. I mean, she's got
give it a play.
She's got a pretty low attention span, so she might get an hour in and be like, that was fun, and then never return to it again. So
no, look, there's good humor, and it's funny because, like, if you think of the story of Horizon, it's super serious and not depressing, but it's like, oh my god, like what happened to humanity? What shame. Aloy is not who she thinks she is, whatever. It's funny because Lego does that thing where it just distills it into the most simplistic, humor-filled narrative, and there are some good moments. Like, I think silence in this game is hilarious, like makes me laugh. So there are some good elements.
Nice. Yeah, I'll give it a go. At least it looks, in terms of eye candy, it's there. I think it looks really, really good.
Pretty, yeah.
You had something else on your list, and I've completely forgotten what it was.
The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I do not have gameplay for this, unfortunately.
That's fine. We'll
I will say
for the next episode. It's
yeah. If you haven't listened to it, I did touch on. I gave some early impressions a couple of episodes ago. But to recap, the Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is Zelda's very, like, it's a weird thing to think that after all these decades, the Princess Zelda is finally the main character in her own game. And this is the Zelda games that are, classic Zelda, not Breath of the Wild. This is the classic Zelda, very much akin to, what was the remake they did? A Link to the Past.
Link's Awakening.
A Link's Awakening, sorry. Where it is that sort of super shiny, toy-like visual style with
the diorama
the
style.
Diorama, that's
so
the joke. I couldn't think.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're playing as Princess Zelda, but what's quite neat with this game is that the the gameplay trick, let's say. It's kind of like a combination of, the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and classic Zeldas, in that you've still got that top-down 2D exploration, doing dungeons, whatever, but Zelda has a staff which lets her sort of learn things in her environment and then summon them at a whim. So that could be anything from a table to a trampoline to enemies that you overcome that you can then summon to help you fight other enemies. And it makes for some very interesting gameplay moments where, there's some light puzzle elements in this game, or some very specific puzzle elements, and you need to figure out how to use your items to, for example, get up to a ledge. Is it a matter of, stacking 3 beds on each other, or putting 2 beds and then a trampoline on the end, whatever? It's got a very interesting and like, I think, a very unique gameplay loop for, a Zelda game. And I'm always amazed that despite this franchise being this old, the team still figures out new ways to make it feel fresh. And yeah, I think it just surprised me that it's this modern day retro Zelda game with these new elements, and it's just really good. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It took me 20 to 25 hours to finish, and it's structured similarly in that, you've got main sort of dungeons to go do, but again, it follows that Tears of the Kingdom / Breath of the Wild thing, where you don't have to necessarily do them in a specific order. The map's pretty open to you, and the way the game starts, it'll tell you to go to one of 2 places. But once you've ticked off those 2 places in any order you want, there are another 3 places to go do. And again, you can do them in any order you want. And it touches on the typical biomes you'd expect from a game like this. So you deal with the Goron, and their volcano, fiery hot land, to some wetlands, to, snow-capped peaks. So it ticks all those boxes, but just navigating the game as Zelda, where you're not Link, that you can just outright use your sword to your bow or your bombs to kill enemies. It's just fresh from that point of view. That said, Zelda does have the ability to channel Link's abilities for a limited amount of time, which comes in handy for, some of the more stickier combat situations or bosses, where you can turn into like kind of like a spirit or a version of Link, which lets you, use his sword, his bow, and eventually his bombs as well when you unlock it. But yeah, I think this game just surprised me, and that's, like I said, I'm always just amazed how this team manages to find innovative ways to keep this franchise just fresh. And it's funny because I know it's not like the sequel to Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, God knows what that's going to look like. But it's funny that it's like they wanted to do a retro Zelda, but they still took elements from that in terms of, experimenting with the free-form way of players getting through puzzles or through certain areas. And I think Jeff mentioned this because he's also played it and finished it. By the end, you can cheese a lot of the stuff because you learn so many things in this game. You can learn, like, every enemy you defeat, you can summon, and then you'll be surprised.
That's wild.
Yeah, you'll be surprised the number of items you can duplicate and use in the real world. I think when you have access to all of them, it's a bit like, it's less thinking and just doing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a game I really want to get back to. I've only played a small amount of it, but I could already see the sort of building blocks of the emergent gameplay from there, like figuring out puzzles in your own ways. And yeah, I guess I can see how it might snowball out of control in terms of the options you have available to you. And then I guess as a result of that, being able to use the same basic solution for most of the puzzles. But yeah, I still want to get back to it. I think it's cool that they get to experiment in these smaller games that are also at the same time more traditional Zelda experiences that some people have been really looking forward to, because Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are entirely different games, in my opinion, to the rest of the Zelda franchise. And some people don't gel with them as much. So yeah, I do wonder what it might do for influencing the next Zelda, because like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild already had this sort of emergent gameplay. It was like you figuring out how to poke the world and what it would do in response to that. This was more just like a predefined way to mess with the world, but I still think the two could influence each other going forward.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
I'm the same as you. I have no idea what they do with the core Zelda franchise now, although I think it would be tough to see them go away from this formula that is sold so incredibly well. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to see.
The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom, Link's Awakening. Just have a baby.
I mean, yeah, that's a mouthful and a half. I'd be down. I feel like given this tech that they have with this diorama style thing, we have to be getting like a Link to the Past remake of some sort eventually. Surely.
I think this exactly that. It's kind of like a template that they'll build on and they'll remake. I think they'll spend many years remaking or even just taking inspiration from the old classic Zelda games.
Because like Link's Awakening was a very odd one to remake because it was like a Game Boy game.
Yeah, it was one
I
of the
guess
more
the remake
obscure
then felt
entries.
so different, to the original. But A Link to the Past is old now. It's a SNES game. Yeah, SNES game. And I think it would just work perfectly in this engine with the, the core gameplay loop it's got there is still like timeless. So I'd be first in line to play something like that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a good franchise.
Cool.
Yeah.
The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom.
We actually play Zelda. Actually, really good game. Would recommend. That's like what a nice game to see the Switch out. Give us the Switch too.
I definitely think it's
Nintendo.
going to be the last Zelda game we see on on the Switch for sure. But maybe even the Switch 2. I don't know. I mean, for how long have we heard of the rumor of Wind Waker coming to the Switch, and it just hasn't happened?
Yeah.
I could see that just being saved for a Switch 2 now and just never coming to the Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
would be cool.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's most of the games. I guess I can touch on. I booted up essentially. I didn't get much further than maybe an hour, but I dipped my toes into Stalker 2. I think it's called Heart of Chornobyl. It's not.
Yeah.
It's spelt differently
It's
for obvious reasons. Yeah, listen, the Ukrainian developers are not super big fans of Russia and anything associated with Russia for very good reason. So they renamed the game during development, in amongst having to relocate from their country and losing several developers to the continuing war there. So that's a whole thing. The fact that this game came out at all is like kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, because of that, somewhat disappointing that it's launched in such a rough state. But at the same time, I think people have given it far more grace with context in mind of, the turbulent development period. It's got really good review scores, in spite of its technical issues. I think a lot of it comes down to its vibe and its very ruthless sort of first-person action. It's a very much a shooter, just like the previous games in the series that asks a lot of you and is pretty unforgiving in many aspects. This isn't this isn't Metro. You've played Metro Exodus, I think you played. This is not that. Like, it looks the same, but it does not function the same. Metro is far more of a first-person shooter action game, whereas this is like every firefight could be life or death, and every bullet you expend is important, and stuff like that. So I've enjoyed previous Stalker games, even though I've struggled to finish them just because they, so challenging and so taxing. So I've been excited for the second one. I had to put it down now because on Xbox at least, there's a massive controller issue where like the dead zones are just broken, or actually non-existent based on what I've read on Reddit. So the setting for the dead zone is just 0. So any minor movements on your stick, anything just like sends your character like turning in a direction, or it's horrendous. It makes the game, it makes it unplayable, honestly.
Sure.
Like, because you're trying to aim and you lifting your thumb off the stick incurs like a movement, or just bringing your stick to a standstill because now you're moving from say right to left to bring it back to center. Your character ends up moving a bit left as a result. Like, it's insane. It is for a game where precision is a big thing. Like, it's impossible to play in this way. So I'm waiting. Apparently, GSC World, the developers are aware of it and they're going to include the fix in a new patch. And to be fair, the day one patch for the game fixed a lot of technical issues that reviewers were struggling with. So yeah, I mean, it's a game that struggles on PC because it's so CPU dependent apparently, and because of that, console, the Xbox really struggles as well. But I think it looks really good, especially on the like game's quality mode on console. Like very, very beautiful looking game and very atmospheric, where when you don't have your lights on, it is fucking dark. It is, you cannot see anything. And so when you're exploring like derelict bunkers or in the middle of a empty forest and something makes a noise and you're trying to track where that noise came from or trying to see an enemy, it really sucks you into that dangerous feeling. And I quite like that. I hope they fix the control issues so I can actually play the game. Yeah. So we'll see. I'll check back in with it. I'd be curious. I think it's a game you would kind of enjoy because you're really into that sort of challenging, brutalistic sort of first-person genre. I think you'd find a lot of enjoyment out of it. But yeah, I think, especially if you're playing on PC, wait for it to kind of stabilize.
I mean, it's on Game Pass as well.
Exactly. It's a Microsoft game, so it'll be on Game Pass, so you can grab it on PC, no problem. But yeah, it's a pity after all this time that this is the conversation about it now, as opposed to it being such a interesting game in the current landscape of shooters. And I think it has a much better chance to find an audience now than the original Stalker games back on PC. And I'd be happy to see that. I just hope they can get around on these technical issues quite quickly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's it, everything. If I'm not mistaken.
Damn.
Yeah?
Yep. I think that's it.
So...
just over an hour. How do we do that?
Yeah, just over an hour. And we've got a bunch of stuff happening over the next couple of weeks. So I think we want to do a episode for the Game Awards like we always do. Just a nice overview of the year and a nice like prediction of what we think will win. Always fun to do that and lose to Matthew because I'm pretty bad at that game.
No, I think I won last year, but you won the year before.
I thought I lost both years. I might be wrong. That's always fun. And then we're going to be making plans for like our Game of the Year episode. Probably doing that like early December, just so we can get kind of done for the rest of the year. There's nothing really big coming out anymore anyway, so we'll just be kind of, I think, catching up on games we've missed during the year and then chatting about the ones that really made an impression. So yeah, I think probably next week will be a predictions episode because the TGAs are the 6th or 7th of December.
Yeah, not too far.
And then Game of the Year somewhere after that. I'm very curious to see what is announced at the TGAs because there's a lot of
second E3.
Yeah, I mean nowadays it kind of is. I mean, what was it, 3-4 years ago the new Xbox was announced there. So it is not. It's anything can go at that show nowadays.
Anything.
I personally think there's a lot of smoke coming from these sorts of Half-Life 3 mines. A lot more this year than has been ever in the past. And you combine that with like the 20th anniversary of Half-Life 2, which by the way had a really good documentary. You should go watch that. Anyone curious about that? You had Half-Life 2 updated by Valve this year with a bunch of new like content and graphical changes and stuff. You've got leakers talking about like, Half-Life 3 is well into development and, Alex kind of came out of nowhere and released not long after that. So...
What released not long after that?
No, Alex, like when Half-Life Alex was announced, it came out like pretty soon after that. It was like a couple of months.
So first of all, I could 100% see that because old Jeff Keighley's good at these like, it's finally happening. Surprise. There's Half-Life.
And he has a good relationship
with them. Yeah. I mean, he's got a history with them as well. Like he was there in the early days. Yeah.
He did a documentary on like the final days of Half-Life 2 development and stuff.
Wow. On a completely different tangent, you'll never guess what I played last night, just for like
Half-Life 2,
Portal 2 co-op.
Oh, what a game!
So I was playing with old John Michael.
Were you playing co-op?
Yeah, I've never played the co-op mode. We were just
same. I've never done it.
But we were just speaking shit, and he was saying like how much he loves Portal 2, and I said, yeah, I need to replay Portal 2 because I played it the year it launched, and I've never played it since
2011. Can you believe
2011. So then I was like, I've never played the co-op mode. It's like, you've never played the co-op mode. Let's download Portal 2 and like play some right now. 10 gigs. And I laugh because it's like my Steam, I try to boot it up from Steam and Steam's like, there's a conflict of your save data here. Okay, so which one do you want to restore? Do you want to restore the one on your system now or the one in the cloud from October 2011?
Oh my God.
I was like, okay, so I literally played it like the year it launched and I haven't touched it since. And that
That's
game
wild.
holds up. And can I tell you, Valve would, just the half an hour I played, we'll go back, we'll finish it. But Valve did things in that co-op mode alone, which is like revolutionary by today's standards. So as a good example, you can hold tab and see your teamie's point of view, like seamlessly.
Oh, that's cool.
And you just think, we played a game this year called Ready or Not, which is basically a modern day SWAT. You can do that in that game today, but it just destroys performance. Like it just hasn't been implemented well. Portal 2 has a pinging system. You can tell your teammate like you need to do this, or you need to put a portal there. You can put a countdown timer. They're just little things. You think like, shit, Valve are they're like such a great developer, and it's so sad that it's taken them this long to hopefully explore Half-Life 3. Because when they made their single-player games, like shit, they really were revolutionary. Like there's a reason Valve is where it is today, and it ain't just their storefront. Like Valve made fucking good games before they were selling hats and skins and just selling digital games.
Absolutely. And I would
love a Half-Life 3. Like I'd kill for that.
We've seen in their recent history that they kind of moving back towards like making games regularly. Like they're not all hitting in the same way. You look at like Artifact, for example, you look at Dota Auto Chess,
Deadlock.
But then you've got like Deadlock coming out now. Like Valve is making games again. The joke of Valve not making games and just doing Steam is like long dead. They are doing things.
I haven't spoken about it.
They've got the Steam Deck out as well. So
yeah. I haven't spoken about it on the podcast, but I've put in about 30 hours into Deadlock.
Oh, into Deadlock.
And it's
sick.
It's
I need to give it a go again.
It's really good. Like it's difficult to get into because it's a Dota thing. It's just a high skill ceiling. There's a lot to learn, lots of new heroes, items. It's a third person view, so it's like completely different. But when you start getting a feel for how the game works, it's really good. Like Valve are great. And I think Deadlock's still a long way from launch, because even now, like you play the game next week, it'll be different because there's a new patch that's trying something or to rebalancing heroes, whatever. But I think when the game finally launches, I think it's got potential to be like massive as well. So
yeah,
I mean,
I forgot about Counter-Strike 2 that came out as well.
Still there,
yeah, it's there was a really telling moment in that documentary where they were asking the end of that documentary is basically like what happened to episode 3, and straight after episode 2 they had started work on episode 3. They just, the way they explained it was they worked themselves into a corner in terms of expectations from what the episodes would be, because they started out with like these episodes are small expansions, but then episode 2 and 1 in combination are almost eclipsing Half-Life 2 in terms of length and quality. And so when they started with 3, they had these concepts in mind, but Gabe Newell actually specifically says that he was stumped as to how to improve on the formula that they had. And there was no technological like unicorn to kind of like chase, whereas Half-Life 1 to Half-Life 2 was a big technical leap forward. And so in combination of not really knowing how to improve gameplay wise and no technology to kind of leverage to make that jump, it stopped. They moved on to Left 4 Dead, and the idea was to come back to episode 3 after Left 4 Dead, and when Left 4 Dead shipped, then Left 4 Dead 2 was happening, and it just never got back to it. And it just seems like they had good intentions to make something and just never got around to it, and have never felt the need to go back, because they don't want to do a disservice to the franchise. Now, I think what's ultimately happened is no matter what they do, it will never live up to that sort of hype. And people are just clamoring for a conclusion to the story that's kind of been hanging for 2 decades now. So, in my opinion, this is like the right time to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and just go, cool, we're making another one. It will be a conclusion to the story, and I think people will eat it up irrespectively.
I think exactly that. I mean, when did Half-Life 2 come out? Like 2004. It was, 20-year anniversary. You can make a modern-day Half-Life with all the modern sensibilities of modern gaming, and I think that'll be good enough. Yeah. Honestly, and I think Alex exists because like they found a technological gap to do something interesting with Half-Life again, and that's why Alex exists, but at the same time Alex does something very drastic with the game's story, and that just reignited the sort of conversation about like people want to see where this goes. And I don't know, I always thought after Portal 2 came out that the logical explanation was to converge those two things. You have a Half-Life with a portal gun. Yeah, that's what I assumed they were going to do. I mean, I always thought it was one of those moments where it's like, like Portal 2 exists in the same universe. Half-Life 2 Episode 3 will just be Gordon Freeman finding a portal gun. Like it makes, to me, it's like if you can imagine merging like the shooting of Half-Life with portals, like shit, it'd be quite a thing to pull off, but how cool would that be? I mean, you never played the original Prey, right? Like the OG Prey, not
2007 Prey.
Yeah, not the one that was remade. That
oh no, I never played that.
So that one you couldn't make portals, but that was just a shooter with like that portal sort of technology, and that was really good. I loved that game. Just give me that.
I mean, there's a multiplayer game out called Slipgate, which is essentially literally that. You can make portals, and it is a first-person multiplayer shooter. It's phenomenal. I thought that's where they're going, and I would not be shocked to hear maybe 10 years from now for some like 20th anniversary for Portal that they prototyped something like that, that they had something like that going. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people who were involved in Half-Life 2 are no longer at Valve, like Mike Laidlaw, who was like a big person with the story, is gone, departed years ago. So I don't know. Maybe new blood there feels invigorated to do something. The team that was a big part of Alex's success were Camposanto, who did Firewatch, and had their, Egyptian archaeologist game kind of like put on the back burner at Valve. Like, if someone's going to take over story or narrative of Half-Life, a team like that would be really good. So I don't know. There is so much talk about Half-Life, that there hasn't been in years, that it just feels like something's going to happen. Yeah. And, I won't be disappointed if it doesn't, but I've felt more confident than ever that there's something brewing. And it might not happen at the TGAs, but I do think we won't be waiting too long for something to happen there. Yeah. And I'm quite excited for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But watch that documentary. Daniel Dwyer's company does a really good job with that. They actually put out a very similar documentary, because I started watching and I was like, have I watched this before? It seemed so familiar and similar because I was seeing a lot of the people and I was like recognizing. And I realized it's because they put out a documentary last year, I think it was last year, for the 25th anniversary of the first Half-Life. And a lot of the team is the same. So it's like, I recognize a lot of these people.
Hilarious.
So both of them are really well worth watching. Very interesting insight into Valve's like process. And if we're not going to get any Half-Life games, I think it's cool to just understand how some of the best games ever made work. So would recommend it.
Yeah, I need to revisit Half-Life 2 and all those games.
It's good. I played it after Alex, and they hold up. They are phenomenal games. Really, really fun. And now they have all these new bells and whistles on PC, so it just looks a bit better. It runs really well. Can recommend. It does not feel good on a controller. I tried to play it on Steam Deck, and I was like, this feels weird. I'm not a fan of this at all. Yeah. Play it as God intended on a keyboard and mouse.
As old Gabe Newell intended.
As Gabe intended, yeah.
As PC Jesus. Cool.
That's been episode 261 of Checkpoint Chat. As always, we hope you've enjoyed. We will be back very soon for, like I said, all the Game of the Year, end of year wrap-up stuff.
Yeah.
Excited for that. And between now and then, just continually catching up on the year's biggest things. I still need to get to Shadow the Erdtree, for example. So we'll see if that happens the next couple of weeks. Don't see it, but we'll see. Listen, it's been a chaotic year, but sure. I do have all intentions to go back. Yeah, thank you again so much for listening. Stay safe, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.